Take a look at this. Hello and welcome to the channel. My name's Todd. I thought in this video I would show you how I made my spider scare box, or spider prank box as some people call it. And that's what this is right here. Now, the other day I was doing a little Googling. I was looking for a large black plastic spider, not for this project, but for something else I wanted to do. And in the search results appeared a spider prank box. And I thought to myself, that's pretty cool. Now, I think I may have seen these years ago, but paid no attention to it. But I got to looking at the ones that I saw, and I thought that I really need to make one of those, and I think I can. It'd be an excellent prop for Halloween to use at a Halloween party, or to put out on the front porch to scare, the trick-or-treaters. So that's what this is, and this is what this video is going to be about. Now, if you don't know what a spider scare box is or how it works, let me show you. Now, before we go into the details on actually how to build the spider box, let's take a closer look on how it actually works. Now, keep in mind that if you're going to build one of these, you can build these in basically any size that you want. The principle on how it works, the mechanism, is the same whether it's small or big. In fact, the ones that I saw online were actually rather small boxes, and they had one of these little black spiders about the size of a quarter, the kind that you would buy in like a package of cobwebs for the spider, and this is actually what came out. So the box was rather small. Now, around here we have bigger spiders, so I needed a bigger box. So let's take a look and see how it works. Now, I went ahead and disengaged the mechanism in here so I can take the lid off. So, as you saw earlier, basically when you slide this back, the spider pops out. Now, how that works is there's a spindle inside here that has a piece of rope tied to it that's connected to this box. So when you pull this back, the rope turns the spindle and causes the spider to come out. So hopefully you can see this, but this is the spindle inside here. And as you can see, it's just a piece of wood, and I've got a couple nails on each end, and it spins freely. And of course the wire here, this is just a coat hanger, and then I attached a spider to it. Now, keep in mind that when you're building one of these, that you'll probably have to do some fine tuning on the wire and doing like adjustments to get the spider to come out just right the way you want it. You'll also have to do some adjustment to the string on how long you want to make it and where you want to tape it to the lid, so that when you pull the lid, the spider pops out. Now, another thing that's important on this box here, if you notice how, let me put the lid on. There's a little gap right here between the lid and this bottom piece. You want to make sure that you have a small gap there. That way the rope will come out when you slide it out. It doesn't get caught. So that little gap there is important. And up to a ½ inch, probably a ¼ inch would work. Now, the other thing that you might want to do, and a lot of this depends on what your skill level is and what kind of tools that you have access to. Now, if you're not sure or don't know how to use power tools or don't have access to them, perhaps maybe you only have like a handsaw, then you might want to choose your materials kind of wisely so that you're not doing a lot of cutting. Because one of the big cuts on this here is actually making the groove for the sliding lid. Hopefully you can see that. And there's two grooves, maybe this way here you can see it better. There's two grooves here that the lid slides in. Now, if you can't make these grooves, there's other ways around it. let me show you. So what you could do is you could buy some smaller wood stock or cut your own. These are like craft sticks that you could buy at the craft store. But again, you know, if you start buying this stuff, you're talking money. So, and the whole purpose of this is to, you know, save money, unless you really just like to build things. But you could take and put a couple of these together on the inside of the box, and you'd cut them to size, and then this would create the little groove so your lid would slide through. And you do the same thing on both of these sides on here. So that's another way to create the sliding lid that would be maybe easier than sawing these grooves here if you don't have like the tools to do it. Now, I have various tools, and usually when I'm building something, I use whatever tool necessary to get the job done. So, like I used on this one, I made these cuts using my circular saw, which, you know, was a little bit difficult, but I went ahead and did it anyways. It'd probably be easier to do it on a table saw, but I was able to do it with a circular saw, and that worked. And I did the same thing cutting these. I used a circular saw, but you could use like a chop saw, would work fine, or, you know, a hand saw. That's basically how the spider box works. Now let's talk about the materials that I used. Now, I got lucky, I guess, because I had several of these old fence pickets left from when I put my wooden fence up a couple years ago. And these worked out really good for the sides of the spider box. All I had to do was measure the length for the sides and on the ends and basically cut them. So that was pretty inexpensive to do that. I think you could pick these up for a couple dollars. At least you used to be able to. So I used that for the sides and the front and back. Now, for the lid and for the bottom, I used some underlayment. Let me show you. This was underlayment that I bought last fall, and I bought a 4x8 sheet, so I still have a lot of it left over, and I actually used it for my grandfather clock. So I still have some of this left over. So I cut it up, a piece for the bottom, and then of course a piece for the lid. Now keep in mind also that depending on how you do your lid's going to be a different size than the bottom. So keep that in mind and make sure you double check everything and do your measurements before you actually cut. Well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clear the table, and we're actually going to put one of these together and build it. So stay tuned. Alright, so I got some pieces cut. Now before that, I want to show you something. Now, before I did all this cutting, I did a little mock-up of what I wanted this to look like and what it should look like. And I put in some dimensions of the pieces and the sizes that I was going to cut. So as you can see here, basically it's about 13 inches long, 6 inches high, 9 inches wide. Then I drew the spindle here with the coat hanger and the spider and the string, and of course the lid, and here's the spindle inside the box. Now as you can see, I'm not a very good artist, but it works. As long as you got some kind of an idea of what you're doing, it'll work. So you might want to kind of draw it out, get some dimensions before you actually cut your wood. Okay, like I said, I went ahead and I cut some of the wood up. Now, I cut the bottom and the four sides. Bottom, side, side, back, and the front. Now, if you notice, like I said before, the front, you want to leave a gap about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. And this way, your lid, now depending on how you do your lid, that way your lid will slide out and the rope or the string won't get caught. Now, on this particular box, I'm going to do the slide out using these pieces of wood here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach these to the side, and then I'll put the lid in between these two pieces here. This will keep me from having to cut the grooves inside of the sides here. But we'll do that later. You've got the box here. Now, remember, you have to have a spindle that goes on the inside. Now, where you want to put the spindle at is in the front. So the spindle will go in something like this. Hopefully you can see this. Maybe I'll use this one so you can see it. Well, here's the bottom of the box, or the front of the box, and your spindle is going to go in here. Now, on the box that I made, what I did, now these are the sides, I measured 3 inches in and, or 3.5 inches in and 2.5 inches down on each side. And I made a little mark. Now, those little marks are where the spindle is going to go into. Now, this is the spindle. Now, the way you do the spindle is once you get the width of your box, you want to get you a piece of wood that you're going to use as your spindle, and you kind of want to measure, and you want it to be roughly, you know, about this size. You want to leave like 1.5 inches or so on each side of it. And there's different ways to do this. This is the way I'm doing it, but if you go online and actually look at other people's projects, there's lots of ways to make this spindle. The important thing is that you want to make it spin freely. But the way I'm doing it is, I'm going to take this spindle and I'm going to drill 2 holes on each end. And into the end of these, I'm going to put a nail. And these are just 16-inch or 16D penny nails. So what you want to do is, you can make these a little tighter, I guess, and kind of nail them in, but I let them a little loose so that they'll slide in easy. So I'll probably put like a little dab of glue on each side of them. And this will be your spindle. And then you're going to have to cut these ends off so that it slides in here. So going back to these sides here, you'll have to, where we marked them at, like this, you're going to have to drill holes on each side, and in those holes is where the spindle is going to go. Now, it's important that you do not drill all the way through here. So to keep from doing that, here's a little trick. On your drill, figure out the depth, like so, and as you can see, it's not going to go through. So to keep it from going through, all I did was wrap this with tape. And so I can go ahead and drill in here, and then as soon as the tape hits that, I know it's not going to drill all the way through. So it stops. So you've got these 2 sides here, and you've got 2 holes for the spindle. And this is the spindle. Now, you take the spindle, once you have these nails in here, or however you're going to do it, you could use some other type of wire. Set it on here, and then you want to measure how you're going to do this. So the goal is to have these nails go into each side of here just a little bit so it doesn't fall out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make sure this wood are the sides where I want them at. And then I'm just going to make a little mark here on the spindle where I need to cut the wire. And so I have these two little marks here, and I'll use a saw or a grinder and I'll cut these off so that the head's not on here, and then I'll put some glue on here. And this way I can slide the spindle into this hole and then slide the other spindle into this hole, and then I'll nail these two boards together, the front, and I'll nail the back, and then this spindle, once it's in there, it'll be free to go back and forth like that. As you can see how I got the nails in there, like so. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut these nails and fasten the four sides of this to the box here. And I'm also going to drill a little hole in the spindle here where my coat hanger for the spider is going to go. But remember, in the spindle we have to have this wire that goes into the spindle. So I'll go ahead and drill the hole into the spindle now, that way I can slip the wire in later. So let me go do that. Now, if you're going to use a nail gun like I'm using, make sure you have some safety glasses on. I'm adding a little bit of glue just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Alright, so I got the basic box put together. Now I went ahead and used some glue and my nail gun, but if you don't have that, you could just use a regular hammer and nails or some screws. And then after I did that, I took some sandpaper and I sanded all the edges just to clean everything up and make it a little bit smoother. So now that we have that done, it's now time to work on the lid. Now when it comes to the lid, you have two options. You can do it the way I did the first spider box, the slide with the grooves cut into the edges. This is a little bit more complicated, and if you don't have access to like a table saw or like a circular saw or power saw, you might want to use the other option that I'm going to show you. But this is kind of nice and it works nice. Now the other option is to take some pieces of wood and basically make some rails that your lid will slide in between. Kind of like this. Let me just show you on the top here. Kind of do a side view here so you kind of see. So what we're going to do is we're going to take and make these guides, but we're going to put them on the inside, and our lid will basically sandwich in between the two of them. Show you sideways here. Sandwich in between the two of them here, and it'll just kind of slide back and forth like that. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and mark this each side here. And then I'll go ahead and I'll cut these, and then I'll be back and I'll show you how they go together in here. Okay, so I went ahead and I cut the pieces of wood that I need to make the rails for the lid. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a little glue on here and then nail them to each side. Now I guess I will use my tape measure here just to make sure that it's good here. Alright, that's good enough for me. So I'm going to go ahead and nail this in here. Guess I need to put a battery in here first. Okay, so you can see how I did that. Now I'm going to stick another piece up here on the top. Now before you nail that, you want to make sure that the piece of wood you're going to use for the lid will fit freely between the two of those. Alright, so this is kind of what it looks like when you get done nailing it. Now I've got to do the same thing to this side, and then I'll probably go back and, I don't know if you can see here, but some of the nails didn't like shoot in all the way, so I'll just take like a little an awl nail set and my hammer and kind of tap them in and make them smooth. So let me do the other side and then we will work on the lid. Okay, so I've got the rails nailed on, as you can see. It's a good way to look at it here. Got two little slots that the lid will slide through. I went ahead and cut the lid and I put a little handle on here. I just, actually this was left over from the spindle, and I just put some glue on it and then nailed it into the wood. And so let me show you how it works. So the lid just slides into the slot here like this. Now it's not perfect, as you can see, but it'll work. I'll have to double check here. I'm hoping I'll have enough room here that the little string will fit through there. If not, I might have to make some room for the string, but I think it'll work. But it does slide rather nice. So the next step is to put the wire onto the spindle and add the spider. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take this coat hanger and I'm going to cut a piece of this off. Now, this is the tricky part. Well, it can be tricky. It's not that it's hard. You just got to play with it and get it the right angle to how you want it. So you're going to have to take this and bend it, and so you're going to get this wire here. And what you want to do is figure out how to put this in. Take this, probably go ahead and cut some of this off now because it's kind of long. You can always cut more off, so don't cut too much off at one time. So once you get this wire where you want it at, you're going to glue the wire into the spindle, and then you'll glue this spider onto the wire. Now you want to use a good glue. Now this is a pretty good glue that I've been using. It's a Gorilla Glue. It works really good, and it'll hold the spider plus the wire. But like I said, this takes a little finagling, so you're going to have to play with it to get it just right. What you're looking for is for this thing to come out nice and easy like this. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to play with it, and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Alright, so I played around with this for a while, and I got the wire connected to the spindle, and then the spider connected to the wire. And then I add a little glue to the wire where it connects at the spindle, and then glue to the spider where it connects to the wire. Now, depending on what type of glue you use, you're going to want to let this set up for a while so it gets hardened and it doesn't fall off when you try to use it. So it's been a while since I did all this. So the next step is to connect the string to the lid so that when I open this lid, the spider will pop out. So let's do that now. So what I'm going to do, hopefully you can see this, is I'm going to take this string and I'm going to tie it to this spindle. And then I'm going to take the string and attach it to underside of the lid. So let me attach the string now to this spindle, and I'll show you what it looks like. Alright, so I got the string attached to the spindle. Now if you wanted to, you could add a little piece of glue, or put a little dab of glue there to hold the string in place. But you want to make sure you tie it on there. And you want to make sure also that when the string pulls, it pulls from underneath the spindle so that it really rises up. If you put the string towards the top and it pulls from the top, your spider's not going to come up very much. So keep that in mind. So let me kind of show you what it does here. The next step is to attach this string to the lid. So let's do that. Now this is where you need that little gap between the lid and here so the string kind of comes out so you can get to it. And again, this is where you have to kind of play around with it to get it the way you want it. So just start by holding the string here like tight, kind of hold it, and kind of see how it won't open. So you got to give a little more slack. So maybe put a little more slack in it and try it. It still won't come out. So we need more slack. Now let's try it. There you go. Now if you look under here, see how much string I have in there? So I had to make sure there's a slack in there so that there's room for this string to pop open, pull open, when you pull the box. So let me just try this one more time to make sure I got it where I want it. So if I tape this about right here, when I open the box, the spider will pop out. So I think that's a good spot for it. So, I'm just going to mark this spot here so I know. And that's basically where I'm going to tape it to the lid. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a knot on the end of this. Where I've made the mark at. And then I'll put the tape on the other side of this knot. And this will keep this piece of string from sliding through the tape when I open the lid. Let me just test it one more time before I tape it. Yeah, that works. So, I'm going to use some tape here. And you can see how by putting this knot in here, it keeps the string from pulling through the tape. So again, I'm going to test it again before I cut this off because I may need to adjust it. There you go. I think it works pretty good. Now, like I said, you can adjust like how far the spider goes out. You can like move this handle up a little closer if you want the spider to actually touch the person's hand. So there's lots of ways you can do little adjustments to make it just the way you want it. But I think it looks pretty good. Let's try it again. Alright, so it works. Let's go ahead and cut this extra piece off here. Clean it up some. Alright, well that's the spider box. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you have a question, leave a comment below. Don't be afraid to try to make one of these. I think you'll have fun. And it doesn't have to be perfect. As you can see, mine aren't. Talk to you later.